Almost everyone over 50 has walked into a room and forgotten why they went in there. Almost everyone has blanked on a familiar name for a few frustrating seconds before it suddenly comes back to you. And almost everyone has been told, usually by a well-meaning friend or even a doctor in a rushed moment, "Don't worry, that's just normal aging." Most of the time, that reassurance is completely accurate. But there's a meaningful difference between normal, expected changes in memory as you get older and a small handful of specific patterns that genuinely deserve a closer look. Today, I want to walk you through 5 of those patterns, not to alarm you, but to help you tell the difference between the ordinary and the kind of change that's worth an actual conversation with your doctor. I want to say something at the very start of this video because I know this topic can bring up real worry for people watching. Nothing about a single forgotten name, a misplaced set of keys, or one distracted afternoon means anything is seriously wrong. The vast overwhelming majority of memory hiccups people experience as they get older are completely ordinary and expected. What we're looking for today is something more specific than that. A small set of patterns, not isolated moments. Before we get into the 5 signs themselves, I want to explain the difference between normal age-related memory changes and something more concerning, because understanding this distinction will make everything else in this video make much more sense. Think of your memory like a filing cabinet. When you're younger, you can pull a file out almost instantly. As you get older, that same filing cabinet still contains all the same files, but it takes a little longer to search through the drawers to find the one you're looking for. That's normal aging. The information is still there. It's just taking a bit longer to retrieve, and a little reminder, a hint, or a bit of context usually brings it right back. Now imagine a different situation. Imagine the file was never actually placed into the cabinet in the first place. No amount of searching will find something that was never filed away to begin with. This is closer to what happens with the kind of memory change that deserves genuine attention. It's not that information is taking longer to retrieve, it's that certain new information isn't being properly stored in the first place, so no matter how long you search, no matter how many hints someone gives you, the file simply isn't there to be found. This is actually the single most useful test you can apply to almost any memory moment. Ask yourself, or ask the person involved, a simple question. Did the information eventually come back, even with a hint or a little time? If yes, that's the slow search filing cabinet, and it's almost always a normal part of getting older. If the information genuinely never comes back, no matter how much context or how many reminders are offered, that's a meaningfully different situation. And it's the kind of pattern worth paying closer attention to across the 5 signs we're about to walk through. This distinction matters more than people realize, and it connects to something we've actually discussed before on this channel, even though it might not seem obvious at first. Chronically elevated blood sugar doesn't just affect your pancreas, your arteries, and your nerves. It also affects the small blood vessels feeding your brain through the exact same glycation and oxidative stress mechanisms we've covered when talking about arterial aging. Your brain is an extraordinarily blood vessel dense organ, and when those small vessels are affected the same way vessels throughout your body can be affected, cognitive function, including memory, can be impacted as well. This is one of several possible contributors to memory changes, and it's a meaningful reason why the work we've done throughout this entire series, managing blood, protecting your blood vessels, supporting healthy circulation, matters for far more than just your pancreas or your heart. It's worth mentioning too that researchers have spent a fair amount of attention in recent years on exactly this connection between blood sugar regulation and brain health, precisely because the brain depends so heavily on a steady, well-regulated blood supply to function properly. None of this means elevated blood sugar is the only explanation, or even the most common one, for the patterns we're about to discuss. It simply means it's one piece of a larger picture, and one more reason the habits we've built throughout this series carry benefits well beyond the ones we originally set out to discuss. I want to be very clear about something important before we go further. Memory changes have many possible causes. Medication side effects, vitamin deficiencies, thyroid issues, poor sleep, depression, and yes, sometimes vascular changes related to blood sugar, among several other possibilities. This video is not designed to diagnose any specific condition, and it absolutely isn't designed to tell you that you have any particular disease. What it's designed to do is help you recognize patterns that deserve a real conversation with your doctor, rather than patterns you can safely dismiss as just getting older. Let me tell you about Alice. Alice is 71 years old, spent nearly 40 years working as a librarian, and if there's one skill she built over her entire career, it was tracking, organizing, and recalling information precisely. Colleagues used to joke that Alice could locate any book in the building faster than the catalog system itself. Alice herself didn't come to me with any concerns about her memory at all. It was her daughter who brought it up, almost apologetically, during a visit that was originally scheduled for something else entirely. Her daughter described a phone call from the week before where Alice had asked the same question about her granddaughter's upcoming school play 3 separate times, each time as though she were asking it fresh, with no apparent memory of having asked and been answered just minutes earlier. Alice herself had no recollection of repeating the question at all. She was surprised and honestly a little embarrassed when her daughter brought it up in front of me, insisting she remembered the entire call perfectly clearly. This is actually one of the most common and important patterns in this entire conversation. The person experiencing the memory change is often the last one to notice it. Alice felt completely fine. She didn't feel forgetful. From the inside, nothing seemed different. It was the people around her who noticed the pattern first, which is exactly why paying attention to what family members observe, not just how you feel yourself, matters so much here. We did a simple cognitive screening in the office which showed some areas that genuinely warranted further evaluation, alongside some basic blood work to rule out simpler explanations first, including thyroid function and vitamin B12 levels, both of which can cause memory symptoms that are often completely reversible once corrected. Alice's blood work came back mostly normal, though her fasting glucose was elevated enough to be a relevant piece of the picture, and she was referred to a specialist for a more thorough cognitive evaluation to understand what was actually happening. I want to pause here and say something important about Alice's story. We're still in the process of understanding exactly what's driving her particular changes, and that uncertainty is actually normal and appropriate at this stage. This isn't a story with a magic resolution wrapped up in a few months, the way some of our other patient stories on this channel have been. What Alice's story illustrates isn't a solution. It's the value of catching a pattern early enough to actually investigate it properly, rather than months or years later after it's had more time to progress without anyone looking into it. Alice herself told me afterward that she was grateful her daughter said something, even though it was uncomfortable to hear at first. "I'd rather know and understand what's happening," she said, "than keep wondering quietly and hoping it was nothing." Now let's walk through the 5 specific patterns, one at a time, so you know exactly what deserves a closer look. Pattern number 1, repeating the same question or the same story within a single conversation without any memory of having already said it. This is different from telling a favorite story again weeks later, which everyone does. This is asking the same question or telling the same story multiple times within minutes with no awareness at all that it's already been said, the way Alice did with her daughter on that phone call. Pattern number 2, getting confused or disoriented in a place that should be deeply familiar. Your own neighborhood, a route you've driven for 20 years, or the layout of your own home. Normal aging might mean occasionally forgetting where you parked at an unfamiliar shopping center. This is different. This is genuine disorientation in a setting so familiar it should require essentially no thought at all, like suddenly not recognizing a turn you've taken 1,000 times before. Pattern number 3, real difficulty following a conversation, a movie, or a book that you would have easily followed in the past, consistently losing the thread of what's happening, needing things repeated or re-explained multiple times, in a way that feels genuinely different from your usual self. This isn't about finding a particularly complicated plot confusing once, it's a consistent, repeated struggle with material that used to be genuinely easy to follow. Pattern number 4, struggling with a familiar task that used to be automatic. This might be a recipe you've made for 30 years suddenly going wrong in a way that doesn't make sense, or difficulty managing finances and bills that you've always handled competently and independently. The key word here is familiar. This isn't about learning something brand new being hard. It's about something that used to require no real thought suddenly becoming genuinely difficult, to the point where steps get skipped, forgotten, or done out of an order that used to be second nature. And pattern number 5, noticeable changes in personality or mood, often observed by other people before the person experiencing them notices anything themselves. Increased apathy, withdrawal from activities, and people that used to bring genuine enjoyment, or new irritability that feels out of character. Just like with Alice, this is a pattern that family members and close friends often catch well before the person themselves does, simply because it's much easier to notice a change in someone else than to notice a gradual change in yourself from the inside, especially when that change happens slowly, over months rather than all at once. None of these 5 patterns appearing once in isolation is necessarily cause for alarm. Everyone has an off day, a distracted moment, a conversation they genuinely didn't follow well because they were tired. What matters is a consistent pattern noticed repeatedly, ideally by more than one person, over weeks or months rather than a single afternoon. A single instance of any of these 5 patterns is simply part of being human. A repeated, consistent pattern across several of them, especially when noticed by more than one person in your life, is what actually shifts this from ordinary into something worth a real conversation. So what should you actually do if you're noticing one or more of these patterns, either in yourself or in someone you care about? First, take note of specific examples rather than a vague general feeling. Mom seems more forgetful lately is much less useful, both to you and to a doctor, than she asked about the school play 3 times in one phone call and didn't remember asking. Specific, concrete examples give everyone, you, the person experiencing this, and any doctor involved, something real to work with, rather than a vague impression that's hard to act on. Second, bring these observations to a doctor's appointment specifically, rather than mentioning them casually at the end of a visit scheduled for something else. Ask directly for a cognitive screening and basic blood work to rule out reversible causes like thyroid problems or vitamin deficiencies, which are genuinely common and often overlooked as a first step, and which can sometimes fully explain memory symptoms that would otherwise cause a lot of unnecessary worry. Third, if you're the one noticing these patterns in a family member, approach the conversation with warmth rather than alarm. Alice's daughter brought this up gently in the context of an already scheduled visit, rather than staging a dramatic confrontation, and that approach made it far easier for Alice to hear and engage with rather than feeling attacked or dismissed. The goal is partnership in figuring this out together, not catching someone in a mistake. Fourth, continue applying the blood sugar management principles we've discussed throughout this series: the plate method, regular movement, protecting your arteries with anti-inflammatory fats, and stable, well-managed glucose levels overall. Given the vascular connection we discussed earlier, these same habits that protect your heart and your circulation are also protecting the blood vessels feeding your brain, which matters regardless of what's ultimately found to be driving any specific memory changes. And fifth, remember that early evaluation opens up more options, not fewer. Whatever is found, whether it's something simply reversible like a vitamin deficiency, or something that requires ongoing management and support, catching a pattern early consistently gives you and your doctor more room to act, more time to plan, and more paths forward than discovering the same pattern years later, after it's had much longer to develop without anyone looking closely. I want to be especially careful here because this topic carries real emotional weight for a lot of people watching. Please don't use this video to diagnose yourself or someone you love with any specific condition. Memory changes have many possible causes, several of which are genuinely reversible once identified, and only a proper evaluation by your doctor can sort through which explanation actually applies to your specific situation. This video is meant to help you recognize when something deserves that evaluation, not to provide the evaluation itself. And if you or someone you love is currently taking any medication, please don't stop or adjust anything based on what we've discussed today without speaking with your physician first. Since some medications themselves can contribute to memory symptoms, and that possibility deserves to be reviewed directly with your doctor rather than addressed on your own. If today's video resonated with something you've been quietly noticing, either in yourself or in someone you love, please don't sit with that concern alone. Share it with them gently, the way Alice's daughter did, and bring it to a doctor's appointment where it can actually be looked into properly. And we are finally at that sleep episode I've been building toward for weeks across this entire series. Sleep plays a genuinely significant role in memory consolidation, the process of actually filing information into that cabinet we talked about earlier, and poor sleep, combined with everything we've discussed about blood sugar and circulation throughout this series, connects to nearly every topic we've covered so far, including today's conversation about memory. That episode is coming very soon, and I think it's going to bring this entire series full circle. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one. And if today's video brought a specific person or a specific moment to mind, let that be the reason you finally bring it up with them, or with your own doctor instead of quietly setting it aside for another day.